US politics. I'm going to bring in our regular Monday afternoon panel of political strategists, Bruce Hawker and Grahame Morris. Good to see you both. And before we do talk a bit about Australian politics, we're going to start with what's been happening in the United States. We are going to be focusing a lot more now on this fascinating contest. And once again, it's Donald Trump that we begin with. Because over the weekend, we've seen, well, there have been protests around his rallies for quite some time now. But have a look. This is what happened over the weekend at one of those rallies. Things did get, well, a little violent, with a protester trying at least to make it on stage and command the podium. He didn't get anywhere near the podium with the Secret Service engulfing Donald Trump. But Grahame Morris, when you look at the sort of reactions that we are seeing at these Trump events now, are you surprised, or was this inevitable?
Look, it is inevitable. He's a polariser. But also his opponents have decided, hey, we need to shake Donald up. We need to make him, see if we can rattle him, because at the moment he's just running his own race. And you know, whether or not the Democrats really organised it or not, didn't matter. They were Democrat supporters. But sometimes this can backfire, because sometimes it can look, make the protesters look like a rabble, and the man protesting against looks strong, and it gives him a chance to run some good lines.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
He's even suggested, Bruce Hawker, that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. I'm not sure if there's any legitimacy to that, but he reckons this bloke had some links to ISIS. Anyway, the point Grahame makes is the right one, though. Trump will use anything to his advantage, and certainly something like this.
He certainly will, and he's been going about his trade vilifying women, blacks, Hispanics, the disabled, you name it. They've all been there targeted by him, and he's used very violent language against them. He's encouraged violence against protesters who have attended his rallies. And of course now, surprise, surprise, people are responding in like manner. It's not a good thing, but it's, I think, to be expected. And I don't think in the long run it's going to help his campaign at all, because Americans are going to start to look at this and think, is this the sort of division, divisiveness, the ugliness that we're seeing now, the sort of thing that we want to see in our president?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, everyone's tried to... Yeah, everyone's trying to put forward a theory as to why Trump's done so well, is doing so well. I know the US President Barack Obama's now offered some views on this as well. He says it's not surprising because the Republicans have allowed this situation to develop where, you know, the attacks on the Democrats, this partisanship has become so over the top that you know, everything the Democrats suggest is going to wreck the country. Obamacare is ruining the country. You know, and Trump himself had been going on about the fact that Obama had been born in Kenya and wouldn't give it up. Anyway, here's a little of what Obama had to say on this.
Imagine what Trump would say if he actually had a record like this. Instead of selling steaks, has anybody tried that wine? How good can that wine be?
But Grahame, Democrats lap that up, but again, none of that's going to shake Trump's popularity.
Everyone's talking about the Don. Bit of a shame, really, because in Australia there's only one Don that counts, and I'm bloody sure that Donald couldn't wheel a cricket bat. It's a problem. I think he's a problem, and it's a problem for Australia, because let's say he does win, then we've got that Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is 12 countries around the world, including us, probably goes into the bin. I think we have sort of isolationist America again, and instead of sort of out there leading the world on all sorts of things, they're going to be sitting on the fence again. That seems to be where Trump is heading. And you know, if Senator Cruz, Senator Rubio and Governor Kasich, you know, were any more dynamic or electable, Donald Trump wouldn't be in this position. But I think the field is very, very weak.
Yeah, and Bruce, we're going to see, well, potentially that field narrow a little this week after another batch of primaries coming up on Tuesday, US time.
Indeed. Look, if Rubio can't win his home state of Florida, then that augurs extremely poorly for him. I suspect that we could see him withdrawing from the race at that point, and then it'd come down to two other challengers, Kasich and Cruz. And Ohio is another state that Kasich has to win, because that's the state where he's the governor. So I think you know, more than likely we are going to see Trump as the Republican candidate. What we'll probably see then is an attempt by him to move back more towards the centre. But along the way, he will have given so much ammunition to the Democratic machine to attack him with that it just may not be anywhere near enough for him to win the presidential campaign. You know, those attacks on women, disabled, blacks, Hispanics. There's been a big leap in the number of Hispanics who are enrolling to vote now. You know, we're seeing the results of the ugliness of his campaign starting to gel in a response which I think will come once he is the Republican nominee, as I suspect he will be.
Yeah, conversely, Bruce, I think the Trump phenomenon does show you what happens when Middle America, or Middle Australia for that matter, feels that it's being squeezed, or it's not allowed to say something, or everything's got to be politically correct. You know, we had it here. He is almost sort of Pauline Hanson in a golden wig. It's that same sort of phenomenon where people said, why can't I say this? Why can't I do that?
I don't think
and they would say, look, they would say Pauline Hanson is talking ratbaggery for 75% of the time, but 25% of the time they're saying, well, what's wrong with that? Same with Trump. He's a problem.
Well, I think it's not just, it's not really a question about not being able to say anything. My God, in America you can say basically whatever you like, and you've got every opportunity to do it. It's really this group in the community who feel that they've been left behind, who've been ignored, who feel that the establishment doesn't have anything to say about them. And in this weird sort of a way, you have on the left Bernie Sanders as the anti-establishment candidate, and on the right Donald Trump. And you know, you've actually got some sort of coalescence in the attitudes of the people who are opposed to the establishment candidate in Hillary Clinton in those two camps. They're the people who feel that the establishment's been running the show for too long. Well, you know, and if you leave it to the anti-establishment, my God, you've got a real problem.
I want to talk a bit about local matters. Stephen Smith, firstly. Now, you've both known and seen Stephen Smith over many years. Bruce Hawker, what do you think? Is this a good idea? Is it crazy? What's behind Stephen Smith, essentially putting his hand up to take the leadership in WA?
Well, look, I start by saying I've always liked and admired Stephen Smith, but on this one I think he is just wrong. Mark McGowan is leading in the polls, has been consistently for months. Labor's got a 53-47 lead over the government. He's the preferred premier in Western Australia. There's no need for a change in leadership there, and all this is going to do is play into the hands of the Liberal Party. The people who will be cheering Stephen Smith on now are the Liberal Party of Western Australia, because they'll say, this is division inside the Labor Party, when, for heaven's sake, there was none there before. You know, it's just like the way in which they attacked Rudd, and then, you know, we had the fallout from that went on for years. They should not be doing this. They shouldn't be importing those sorts of attitudes into Western Australia that we saw in Canberra all those years ago. That Labor, at a national level, has now healed up. It's a terrible thing, and Stephen should withdraw now and never, ever even consider doing it again.
Graham, opposition's tough at the best of times, right? To hold your own team together, let alone to have someone from the outside coming in and upsetting the apple cart.
Well, that's true. But look, I was told this morning that, yes, there's published polls, but most of them don't count for the politicians. It's what's happening on the ground in the marginal seats. And I'm told this morning that on the back of some of the federal polling, it shows that the state opposition is not cutting through in the areas that count. And it seems that quite a lot of sort of opposition people, Labor opposition, are saying, well, look, my career is passing me by. What do we do about it? We haven't really got a leader in the Parliament. We'll have a look at Stephen Smith. Now, you know, we all know Stephen Smith. He's a good, steady hand. The original word some time ago was that he'd have a go at the Lord Mayor in Perth. But look,
a good steady hand, steady hand, though. You're right. But is he going to, you know, turn around those
I hope
internal
he
polls?
goes into the caucus tomorrow with a huge cricket bat and starts wheeling. He'll do wonders for the Liberal Party vote.
And exactly
look,
right. Every
why
Liberal
now?
would think
Why
that.
now?
Every Liberal
Why
would
now?
think that.
Yeah, okay.
Why now? I gather is because some of the marginal seat polling is not very pretty for the opposition.
Well, I'm hearing
Right,
exactly the
finally,
opposite. Absolutely the opposite.
Right,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of published polls where we can actually see the numbers, it's rather confusing because the Fairfax Ipsos poll has 53-47 lead for the coalition. Last week News poll and Essential poll 50-50. Who's right, who's wrong? Where does it really sit, Grahame? What's your sense of it?
Well, I'd rather be Malcolm Turnbull than Bill Shorten. You know, today's poll is... Look, we're getting back to somewhere near normal, but the coalition clearly has its nose in front, and Bill Shorten, when it comes to a choice between Turnbull and Shorten, Shorten runs fifth. But we've got rid of that silly honeymoon period where the figures were unrealistic. We're getting back to normal.
Yeah, Bruce?
Well, Turnbull's dropping pretty dramatically in the polls, and that's not a good thing for him personally. And I suspect that what's going to happen is that if they were to limp back over the line at the next election, that he would be in a fair bit of trouble because he does not have the support of his rank and file, and he doesn't have the support really of a large section of his caucus. And I think that's a real problem. Prime Ministers should be allowed to be prime ministerial. They're not letting him do that. I think he's on a hiding to nothing on that one. I think the 53-47, you're sort of in the right area probably with that sort of a number. It might be 48 to 52, but I think the government is still ahead, but by golly, it's not a fantastic position to be in, and still he's not showing any leadership when it comes to the economy or any of these other issues. Now Labor's being attacked over their policies around superannuation and negative gearing and so forth, but at least they can say we've got a policy there that we're doing something with. The problem with this guy is that it looks like he just talks and talks and talks and doesn't say anything. So
we'll see what he does in the coming weeks, and the other one we might return to is New England. There is a poll out today which shows it's going to be a tight race, but I think give that a bit of time and we'll see how things are shaping up between Barnaby Joyce and Tony Windsor. In fact, Bruce, I seem to recall he's your cousin, isn't he, Tony Windsor?
He is indeed.
Almost.
I won't hold that against him, though. You can pick your friends, but not your relatives.
It's true. Well, we might come back to that one another time. We are right out of time today. Bruce, Grahame, good to catch up with both of you. Thank you very much for that.